Hey, all, welcome to this week's episode of the Mike Muldoon podcast. Today, I've got an interview with Bitsy Kemper, who is the dynamo behind 21 children's books and the upcoming Mommy and Me Micro Moments, a fun 5-minute-a-day devotional journal for moms and kids, and that's getting released next month, April 2024. She's also got 2 more picture books coming out next year with the Little Press. You may have seen her on CNN and CBS The Morning, or in radio, newspapers, and magazines across the nation. And she's she's no longer thrilled to have to play the corporate marketing game, which I'm always excited when people find their passion. You know, when they get to leave something maybe they're not super stoked about and really get to work in the field that they're super passionate about. And when you talk to Bitsy, you'll realize how super passionate she is about writing children's books and being fully immersed as a writer. So right now, she just fully enjoys her time, rocking authors' visits and workshops from California to New York. So here's my conversation today with Bitsy Kemper. Alrighty. Thank you so much again for, joining me here today. And it's Bitsy, right? I am saying that correct?
Yes.
All right.
Bitsy.
So what's that? I'm sorry. So what's the name from?
Okay. Yes. So I actually had Bitsy Kemper on my driver's license for a while because that's what all my college ID was. And when I first had my license, I used my college ID and they said, which do you want, Elizabeth or Bitsy? And I'm like, keep it Bitsy. And then when you had to travel and show your passport or 2 forms of ID, I figured I'm not going to get anywhere if I keep 2 names. So I believe the state of California has me down as an alias, which is always interesting. So they have me down as both, but I do. So Elizabeth is my real name. Right. And my brother, I'm the youngest of 5 kids in 5 years. So my brothers and sisters, very
go
busy.
Mom.
Yeah. And then she died when I was 2. Oh. So then my dad raised us. No, I don't mean to say, No, I get it. Slam on you. But yeah, so she had a rare cancer. And so my brothers and sisters called me Little Bit, thinking they were saying Elizabeth. Right. And the family stayed very close together. And my dad, still very close with my brothers and sisters. And so that's how it stuck.
It's and I know we're going to talk about your book in a second, but and it's just one of my, as a parent, I have 2 kids, so I have a 9 and a 6-year-old, and I just every day is about how am I here as long as I possibly can be for them. It's like as long and I had kids late. I didn't have my first till I was 40, so for me, I'm always doing the math in my head. Okay, well, if I can get here at this point, get them along. So yeah, that's just kind of where my brain is always with. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay. Well, starting at the very beginning, I'm the youngest of 5 kids. Yeah. I don't think we want to go that far back. No. So I had a career working in the computer industry for a while. I did PR and marketing for a company for a long time. And part of that job, I was working on a grassroots campaign for getting the computer into family homes more comfortably. Right. Not letting parents be afraid of the computer. So I, part of that marketing program that I was in charge of, I co-wrote a nationally syndicated newspaper column called PC Parents. Okay. And then I started writing for my local papers for a bit. Right. And when I had my second child, I left the company and decided, I really like the writing thing. And I kept doing it with my local papers. Right. And after the contract for the syndicated column ended, I thought, I like this writing thing. And I started writing a children's book in my head when I was walking my youngest around the block in his stroller. And every day that I went on another walk with him, I try to challenge myself to come up with one more verse. And I did it in rhyme just because, he doesn't know what I'm saying. He doesn't know if they rhyme. He didn't know if there was any logic to it. Right. But it was really fun. So I would challenge myself every walk. So then I thought, you know what? This is a book. I think I just wrote a children's book. So I went to I'm a data person. So I looked everything up. I went to a children's book writers conference in LA. And I got to learn a lot about the formula, if you will, and what the
Right.
expectation is. And it was so different than the computer world.
Right.
Because so welcoming. Like if I have a computer chip and you are building a computer, you either use my computer chip or someone else's.
Right.
So I don't like that. I'm not going to support that other guy. But in the children's book industry, if I write a children's book, you write a children's book, and let's say, Mike, your book goes on the New York Times bestseller list. That's good for me, because that means, guess what? Children's books are doing well.
Right. People want them.
Yeah. So maybe your book is just going to help me out, give me a chance. So it was very supportive. And I submitted that manuscript. And it was a surprise when they had announced that there was going to be a competition for everybody that submitted their manuscripts for critique. And I thought, oh my gosh, they're going to call my name. I just got so excited because I'm like, this is a good book. Then I had my one-on-one with the critiquer. And it's terrible. It's actually a really bad manuscript.
By the way, as a writer, I know that. I mean, I've written projects and I've written stuff. I'm like, this is the one, this goes. And then people go, this is not, no. But then again, writing is subjective. That's what I always tell. I just like to think they didn't get it.
Right.
You just didn't understand it. It was just too highbrow, too intellectual.
Yeah, right. But anytime I get caught up, so if I critique somebody else's work, I think, that's me on the other side there. Like they think this is really good. Otherwise, they wouldn't have brought it to me for help and assistance. And I just, everybody's first book, I'm sorry to say, anybody and everybody who wants to write a children's book, I have 21 out now, and I have 2 more coming out in the next year. And I just have to remember that person, just because this is crap, I would never say that to their face, but just because this is very good doesn't mean that they're not a good writer. And just like you're saying, Mike, it is subjective. So the thing is, there's rules, right? There's certain things that you do in a novel, and people don't want anything innovative. They don't want really anything off outside.
Right. There's a formula, stick to it. Yep.
When you get famous, sure, break all the rules you want. But for your first book, stick to the rules. So I think I got off track. You asked me some of my background.
No. Well, it's really, it's really interesting because there's a level of empathy though. You have to actually, which I think is important in life in general, just when you're communicating and dealing with people. I do remember when I first started writing, I thought everything was amazing and it wasn't. And, but I do remember as I got better as a writer and I started critiquing other people's writing, I was not good at it. I was not good at, like, I was too harsh, and I was harsh, and, and I've had to, over the last, maybe 10 to 15 years, back it up and think exactly like you did. Like, this person spent a lot of time, working on this, and in their mind, it's great. So even though this is bad, let's not tell them how bad it is. How do I constructively help them to see how this might be better? Unless, of course, they're lazy and they banged it out in 2 days, then I have a problem with that.
Right. Okay. Oh, I have another story for that. But there's 2 things, right? Like, so I was definitely the same place as you. When I first started, I would tell everybody what was wrong with it, really. What didn't fit the mold, what wouldn't work in a successful children's book, where now I try very hard, but it's taken me years. But now I try to focus on what works well and how they can do that better.
Right. Exactly.
And it is a very different perspective. But, everyone wants to write a children's book, I think. I mean,
I think everybody thinks it looks simple too, because like I said, I read to my kids and I'm like, wow, there's like 4 words on here and there's this and that. But I've talked to people in the past who wrote children's books, and I understand it's not as easy as like you can write this little, there is definitely a formula there. There's definitely something there, or everybody would just be able to do it.
You have to have a likable character that has a problem they have to overcome. They have to try and fail, succeed based on something that they did, and then be different at the end than they were at the beginning, but have a similar either location where they started out, or something else that's familiar, that's reminiscent, kind of a callback from the beginning.
And you have to do it in very little words, because you know what? My 6-year-old is not going to
500 words or less.
500 words or less. Oh, there is a word count.
Nowadays, most children's books are 500 words or less. Isn't that crazy?
Okay, wow.
It's like, a couple of tweets, right?
It's true.
And you have to come up with a whole plot line. Right. And so one time I was giving a talk at a library about the children's book industry and how it's, a little bit different in a good way, because it's so welcoming. And anybody can write a children's book as long as they put some time into it. And a young man came up to me afterwards, and he had his little girlfriend with him. And he's like, yeah, so I wrote this children's book. I wrote it yesterday in like 30 minutes. And so I just need to know how I'm going to go about getting it published. You didn't really talk about that part. Right. And I said, oh, well, that's I love your enthusiasm, but I'm going to hasten to guess if you wrote it yesterday in 30 minutes, it's not ready yet. It's not. And, he gives a quick look over to his girlfriend, who's just kind of standing there meekly. And he turns back to me. He says, well, I'll get it published if I want to. I'm like, fantastic. You do
Anybody could self-publish. I mean, whether or not somebody buys it is a whole other story.
I would say that, it's easy to write a children's book. Right. It's really hard to write a good children's book. So if you're going with traditional publishing,
well, and something like that, it's almost a slap in the face to the crowd. I used to have a friend of mine who would come up, he's a film writer, but he would write a script in like 3 days. Like, dude, will you read this? Will you read? I'm like, and that would piss me off, because here's the thing. You got lazy and now you want me to occupy 2.5 hours of my time, probably 3 hours, because the amount of time I'm going to have to stop because of how irritated I am that I'm actually reading this thing you wrote in 3 hours.
Yes. Oh my gosh. That's so funny. Yeah. Because they'll say, okay, I wrote this now. Fix it. They'll give it to me to fix. And I'm like, this is yours. This isn't mine. I can tell you how to fix it, but I'm not fixing it for you.
I think all writers have these stories. It's funny because I do quite a bit of writing still. I'm actually on 2 projects right now I'm being asked to look at. And what
are you doing? Can you
So a film, one is an adaptation. Somebody just asked me to take a look at. They sent me the book to take a look at it, and we'll see. It's very early stages with them, but I like these people, and I trust them. So anyway, so I enjoy writing quite a bit. But the funny thing is, I hate being around writers, which is so like. My wife's like, "Why don't you join a writer group?" Like, no, especially film writers. Like, I can't, because I think, like you just said, in the children's world, and again, there's obviously psychology behind this, and probably a lot of it is just based on an insecurity. But in your world is interesting, right? We're all welcome, we're this, not, but like, it seems like a lot of times with other film writers, it's all about, well, let me just tell you what you did wrong, or why that's not good, and why mine's so great. And I've just always had a hard time being around other film writers.
Yes. So. And other film writers, right? If your script sells, mine won't. You know what I mean? That's the mentality of a screenwriter.
Right.
Where the children's book industry is, very lucky. Maybe that's why I've stayed, because it is supportive.
Well, on the flip side, I do have a ton of them that haven't. So the thing is, I think, like you found out for yourself, you've always been a writer. Whether you were just doing it, it was always in your head. You were always doing it, and that is your passion. I think when people like myself, I love writing, whether or not any of my stuff ever goes anywhere. It'd be great if more of it went places, but at the same time, I think if you're a writer, you just love writing. So I sometimes joke around to my wife that I'm going to, like, where your children's books are out there in the world, mine are probably more adult themed screenplays, but at least someday when my kids get older, they can go, hey, let's go read a bunch of dad's work here. It's just all stacked up.
Yes. Yeah. And isn't that a good feeling though, knowing that you have created something?
Oh, it's a fantastic feeling. I think everybody should do something creative. So you wrote all these children's books. So what's the new one that's coming out? Because it was really interesting about kids, because there was, just in your title alone, I could relate to a lot of that.
Right. And it's so much of it. I mean, listening to your podcast, there's so many times where I scream out, yes, okay, I'll tell you about mine, and then I'll tell you how some of yours makes me scream. That's exactly, we are kind of on the same wavelength for this. So the short title of my book coming up is Mommy and Me Micro Moments.
Right.
The subtitle is a fun 5-week devotional journal for busy moms and kids.
Right.
So that says a lot. And so this is in the form of a devotional journal. And you don't even necessarily have to read the Bible thing that starts it. It's the meat is what comes in the middle. And it's all about capturing micro moments of time. Right. So there's 2 micro moments of time that you're capturing. When you're a mom sitting with your child, I'm imagining most moms will do this before bed. You're capturing that micro moment of time with your child, right? They're sitting by your side, and you purposefully have chosen to be present with your child. And they know that. They know when you're reading them a book, if you're doing the laundry list and you're, going all through what groceries you have, what meetings you have tomorrow, all of that, they know.
Right.
But if you're sitting and you're choosing to play a game with them, to do some sort of activity. So the activities in there all focus on micro moments, not big things like, what grade are you in, or
Right.
yeah, small things like how many teeth have you lost as of today? Or when you look out the window, what do you see? Because you're not always going to be in the same house.
Right.
If you stay in the same house for 40 years, your child comes back or your child moves in, what does that view look like now?
Right.
If you have you end up with a little keepsake that looks back on just small moments where, maybe you play a game, find me something yellow, and maybe they don't know what yellow is right at that point. And you can document that. I had to show them what yellow is and why yellow is different than orange or whatever. But it's just those little moments in time that you get to document and be present for. And you can't really celebrate it when you're in it. Or
Right.
I think, like, you probably understand when your kids were little, right? You spend a lot of time thinking about what their next stage is, because this stage is really hard.
Right.
Oh, if I could just get them through teething, if I could just get them through solid food, if I could through
no bedwetting, being done with that.
Right.
Yeah.
You're always looking at what's next versus you just don't have the time to really sit and look at where you are. So I think there's just absolute joy and beauty in celebrating small moments, small parts of your child that you'll be able to look back at. You're documenting it.
That's interesting, because my wife is really big on that, and I'd like to say I'm big on it, but like, she's really big at taking that time, sitting there, playing board games with them. It's a really interesting thing that when we had our first, people would say, let them cry themselves to sleep. Put them in the room, let them cry themselves to sleep, and we've never done that. So anytime our kids have ever cried, we went. We still, to this day, my daughter's 9 years old, and sometimes one of us will lay with her while she goes to sleep. And my wife and I always talk about how amazing that is, that we got that extra 15 minutes a day or night, that cumulative over the years has added up to this time together. And my wife was the one that's pointed it out. Actually, it's funny because my wife and daughter are right down the hall, they're actually together right now. That your kids open up to you. Like, my wife says she finds out everything about what's going on with my daughter as she's going to sleep at night, because during the day, it's like, how was school? Yeah.
Right. And even if you have them as a captive audience, if you pick them up and drop them from school, sure, you have that time, and that's a great time to try to capture moments, but they know that they're a captured audience. They're a captive audience. They know that you're talking to them. You're forcing conversation. But when you're snuggling there at night, they know that you've chosen to be there. Even if they pled and begged, please, 5 minutes, they know that you're there for them.
It's amazing. How many people like to be away from their kids too, which is another thing. Like, my wife and I, we love to take our kids everywhere. We take them everywhere. People like you on a wedding. Oh, you leaving the kids home? No, they'll come with us. They're invited. They'll come with us. Wouldn't you have more fun if they weren't there? No, I want them to have these moments.
Yes. My husband and I spent the first night away from our kids. So we have 3 kids. They were in 4 years. But I have a girl, boy. And we spent our first night away from them. Sometimes, if I had to travel for work, I would be home. He would travel for work. I'd be home. We both were away from our kids for the first time on our 19th anniversary.
Wow.
And
yeah,
that was the first time we ever spent a night away from our children.
Yeah, I think my wife and I had to do it once when my daughter was young. We had to be somewhere. It was a wedding. It was a travel wedding that kids weren't invited to. But it was the only time. I mean, so like, we're traveling in 2 weeks. We're going to Europe in 2 weeks. And it's like, oh, you're going to leave the kids behind? No, they're coming with us. These are experiences for them. They get to see this thing. This is how they grow. And it's interesting because we spend a lot of time with our kids that you can see they're a little bit more well-adjusted than children who don't get a lot of time. Or, listen, every parent, let me back up here too. And I think you can agree. Every parent's trying to do their best, right? I think every parent, if you're trying to do your best for the most part, you're trying to do your best. Exactly. So I'm not here to criticize at all, but I just have noticed that, even with daycare, like, we never put our kids in daycare. We just never, even my wife and I struggle for years with one home or one this and that, because we never went. Now, I'm not saying you can't do that or it's bad if you do it, but we just always, we like having them around.
Yes. Yeah. Same. I mean, I understand both, but similarly with me, I mean, I have a woman, a woman who still basically won't talk to me because I brought our 2-year-old daughter to her wedding. I was pregnant with my second, and I'm like, no, she's a part of us. But the thing is, I don't know if your oldest was as well behaved as ours. She's just, I think a lot of first children are maybe a little bit more mellow. And we, of course, thought it was my husband and I are like, it's our parenting. We can take her. Like, I felt more than comfortable taking her to that wedding because I knew she wasn't going to scream or yell, or pitch a fit.
Right.
And then we had our second, and same parenting techniques, but our middle very different.
We got that. So we have girl, boy, and girl anywhere, fine. Boy, great in school, take him home. And he is just like that. I'm like, you want to take some of this energy back to school? But again, I think realistically too, what your book, what's really interesting about it is getting people to take a moment to focus on, it's almost like people who get those apps that say that go off every once in a while that tell them to take a moment and breathe. It's the same thing here. Yeah. Take these things to build on small moments, because what you're going to see is the culmination of what it'll do in the future. And how these will be the memories. Like, it's like throwing big gifts at somebody, right? Yeah, of course, for a moment, they're going to like it. But after a while, the gift just fades into the background. Taking my kids to Disney, which we've done a few times. Yeah, there's memories there, but they also tend to remember a lot of the small things. Like, oh, do you remember when Daddy and we did the marshmallows around the thing outside? Or you laid in here and I drew that picture of you.
Yes. Okay. So when you were talking about your trip to Disneyland and how you were Disney World.
Yeah, Disney World.
And Disney World, and you were getting frustrated and you had to stop the car and you do stuff, and then your daughter just starts cracking up because you're flipping out and she's not used to seeing you out, so you start laughing, and everyone is laughing sooner or later. Like that is like, that was moments where I'm screaming, yes, that is a micro moment right there. She's going to remember you guys laughing in the car driving to Disney World a heck of a lot more than she'd remember any roller coaster that she went on.
Right. And still to this day, she still makes a joke of it. She goes, Dad, I think I have to eat, Dad, every time she gets in the car, because she wants me to play the joke now. The joke is, oh, come on. So she loves the joke. It's great. It's amazing. When I see some parenting out in the world, maybe we're getting off topic here, but like when I see somebody like berate or yell at their kid in public, and I'm thinking, oh gosh, you think this is a problem now? Look at what you just set that up for in the future. Like when your child has problems in the future, how much that's going to cost you compared to the fact that they're just being a little naughty in a supermarket right now.
Right. And you can't approach them and say something.
No, you can't.
Right. Because then you're the jerk. But that's the whole reason. The whole reason I got this idea to write this book is because I throw my neighbor under the bus for this, but they don't know which one, because I have 3 neighbors with young kids. And we get together every Friday mostly, and kids play out. My kids are older, but they're younger kids play out in the street. And we were talking, and one of their kids came up and was like, Mommy, look at this leaf. And look at this leaf. Look at this. Mommy, look at this leaf. Look at this leaf. We were talking, and she finally said, we're grown-ups are talking, go away.
Right.
Like everything in my heart is like, my kids are upstairs in their rooms on their computers doing homework. Yeah. Right. But like what I wouldn't give for my teenager to come to me on purpose.
Right.
And show me a leaf. And I can't say to her, dude, you're ruining the moment, because he's not going to show you a leaf for much longer. I can't.
It's so funny that you said that. My wife had just sent me something the other day that basically just talked about like how many years or how many days or something like that where it'll be where your kids will stop hugging you. They'll stop doing something else. And you're right. They'll stop showing you the leaves. And you might even ask to see the leaf, but you know what? They don't want to show you the leaf anymore because they're too busy doing their own things. Right. I say that all the time. Right. It moves quickly. I've seen my daughter go from baby to 9. I mean, just so quickly, and 9 to 18. And that next few years are going to change a lot of things in a house.
Yes. And you can't, when you see someone in the parking lot or your neighbor standing next to you, it's so hard to be able to say, please slow down. Please look your child in the eye.
Right.
Please spend 30 seconds and acknowledge them and let them know that they are important, because you can't say that without coming across as judgy or pushy or know-it-all, right? And so your kids are perfect. Like, you can't really open the door for that kind of a conversation unless you're saying something like, always drove me crazy is when, no matter what stage your child is, well, wait till they start eating foods. Well, wait till they start getting in there. Well, you just wait. And, that's rude.
Right.
They're kind of saying the same thing, but they're saying it in a really nasty way.
Right.
Versus,
and then most people don't tend to accept that though. They'll go, oh yeah, maybe you're right. Oh, I'm seeing that. Whereas if you try to parent somebody, teach and parent their kid, it actually comes off a little bit more hostile. It's another thing I've always tried to do with my kids is, a lot of times you take your kids to like a playground or an indoor park or something like that. Now they got all these parks. And one of the things that I've noticed that they love is that when they catch you watching them, right? Because so many times people, what do? They go there, they have them run off, they get on their phones, and that's it. It's it. Scrolling, looking at the phone. And what I always try to do is I always try to, I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty of it as well. But I'll always try to put it down and I'll always try to watch them. And it's amazing the look on their face. And it's almost like a slight embarrassment too when they catch daddy's been paying attention to me. They're doing their thing, they're being crazy, whatever it is. And then they look over and daddy's just watching them and they go, right? Because and it's that I always say that I just think human beings in general, that, they just want to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. And I think with children, that's the most amazing thing you can do. See them, hear them, acknowledge them.
So this is my first grown-up book for grown-ups. I don't like to say book for adults because that sounds sassy. So this is my first time writing a book for moms to do with their kids.
Right.
So that was a departure for me versus a straight on children's book.
But it seems like in this day and age, right, where everybody needs to have something to track them, track their steps, track their workout, track their calories, track this in a busy world that we live in, tracking something like this is probably one of the most important things because it's very easy to send our kids to the wayside. They're on their computer, they're on their screens, they're with their friends, they're watching TV, and we think, oh, that's what they want to be doing. But most of the time, what they really want is our attention.
Yes.
They want our attention. And it's funny because my son, he's into this Minecraft thing and I'm actually really impressed with what he can build. But we take him off the screens. We bring him out in the nature. The other day, we had him on a walking trail, my daughter. And then all of a sudden they just jump into this whole creative thing that reminds me of being a child, running around, picking up sticks. There was in our neighborhood, there was a water trail that kind of goes through a hiking trail by us, throwing the sticks in the water and watching the water go. It's just amazing when and ultimately their thing was just having fun being out with mommy and daddy. But you're right. In a chaotic world, you're writing a book right now that some people have to be reminded, as much as you might love your kids, as much as you think you're doing the right thing, you might just have to take 5 seconds and acknowledge them.
Right. And how fun, especially with my kids, it's also the book that I wish I had when my kids were little, because how fun would that have been if I had, even all 3 of my kids. I had 3 different books, one for each of them.
Right.
And I asked them all the same question and, how different their answers would be. What was your favorite part of today? Right. I would have just the craziest answers from each of them.
Right.
Some of them are drawing, right? So you get to see their drawing abilities, but it's a purposeful drawing. I'll ask you to, draw your family portrait is one of the activities. And it's great to see who they choose, unprompted. And I even say, Mom, let them do their thing.
Right.
Don't comment, let them draw. And it's interesting to see who's the biggest that they draw. Did they add their dog? Did they forget, somebody else? Did they add a family member that doesn't live in the house?
Right.
Yes. Right. I mean, but legit. That's all of these things. I would have loved to have had all 3 of them together and ask all of them these questions and just seeing how differently they all answered them.
My wife this weekend, get them away from screens and all that stuff, pulled out painting. So the kids spent about 2 hours just painting in the kitchen, painting all these designs and stuff like that. I can honestly say, though, every family member makes it into a picture. My daughter is very Libra. She's very fair about things. So she loves everybody equally. But my son, he'll be like, Daddy, I think I love mommy just a little bit more. Daddy, I love it's okay.
Oh, my God. Okay. I had my youngest one time run up to me and go, Mommy, remember how I used to not like Daddy? I like Daddy now.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, you can't even get upset about it. You just got to love the fact that that's what.
Right. It's just so precious. But again, it's capturing that.
Right.
Right. It was all about Mom until he just figured out Dad's actually kind of cool. And he couldn't wait to tell me.
My kid loves when I throw him around. That's when he loves daddy. It's really interesting with my children. And again, just, we've gotten off onto kids here, but like each of them like their own little things. Like when it comes to playing, it's dad, like both my daughter and my son. No. Mommy, you just sit on the sidelines. Dad, you run around, you chase us, you pick us up, you do this, But when they're sick or they're feeling down or they're just having a tough moment, they just want to curl up in mommy's lap and give mommy a hug. And they're both there. We're really lucky. Our kids are I can honestly say my kids are pretty cool. They're pretty amazing kids and pretty well behaved and they're fun, But like I said, we like spending a lot of time at them.
Yeah.
So you have 21 children books.
I do. Some of them I've ghostwritten for like celebrity type people, picture books. And
they get all the credit. I've ghostwritten for people before and it's great. It was like, it's amazing. It's like, yeah, it was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get the idea for this image?
In your busy day and schedule, how did you manage to write a children's book? Oh, I get it. So are they all obviously themed? Is there a continuous theme through all of them, like friendship?
No, most of the books that I have out now are nonfiction. Some they're older. Some of them were write for hire, which means somebody else gave me the idea and said, and the format.
Right.
It's varying degrees of how specific that format is.
Sure.
And they said, write this story.
Okay.
And I could choose whatever voice I wanted to write them in. In fact, my very, very first books came from that conference where I did not write a great picture book.
Right.
I just happened to run into somebody who was looking for a writer to do some series that they had coming up. And I sent them a writing sample. And she called me up and said, yours came in right at the right time. I just walked out of a meeting and we need somebody creative to take some dry topics and have some fun with it. Right. And your writing samples are exactly what we need. Do you want to write 4 books for me? And I was like, who would say no to, right?
I don't know. Let me think about it.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, yes. Like she didn't even get to the M in me when she said, would you like to write 4 books for me? I was like, yes. Yeah.
Write 4 books for
I'll write your bio. I don't care. Just.
I always think some of the most rewarding thing is getting paid as a writer. That's the money that I've ever earned in my life is always the money I've earned when somebody trusts me and my creative palette to actually go off and write something. That's me. And it's never been like tons, but like when I get paid as a writer is also when I'm probably the most happiest in my life because it's like everything's getting paid. Oh, and I'm doing something that I love. I mean, that's just it. I mean, my wife says sometimes I'm a tortured writer because, realistically, I'd like to just spend every waking of my moment do it. But I can't, I got to schedule it around other things and stuff like that. So what else you got going on? Anything else? So the book's getting released.
So I have this one coming out. Supposed to launch on April 27th, 2024. And then I have 2 picture books coming out with Bless This Press, which is a division of the Little Press publishing house. And those are 2 picture books for grandparents. Aww. And it's Best Friends with Grandma and Best Friends with Grandpa.
Oh, that's sweet.
I came up with that idea when I had, I said something and I thought, oh my gosh, that's exactly what Gammy would say.
Right.
And I thought, I wonder if she had any idea what an impact she had on my life.
Right.
So much. And then I started thinking of all my mannerisms or my sayings or my perspectives, how much of them are from her.
Right.
And, so I was thinking to myself, gosh, I know there's got to be other grandparents that have this strong of an effect on their grandkids without even knowing it. So both of them are celebrations of how the grandparents impact your childhood in a positive way.
That's sweet. So where can everybody find you? What's your website?
I'm not, I guess you could say I'm not all that creative because my website is bitsykemper.com.
Okay, perfect. It's easy to find you there. And I'll make sure that I put in the link here so everybody check out looking for any children's books, look for the release of a new book. But I got to tell you, it's been actually great talking. Have I missed anything?
I don't think so.
No. You guys want to share? Okay, perfect.
We meandered about, but we...
I know we just went off, well, it's again, when it gets to kids, it's something, like I said, I had kids much later. And sometimes I go, okay, how much different would my life been if I had them earlier? Right. Because now I'm looking at a lot of my friends who are my age, like I'm going to be 50 this year and they're celebrating high school graduations, college graduations. And I'm thinking, gosh, I mean, I'm going to be 60 before we get to that point. But then I think back and I go, I don't think I would have been as good of a parent or as a present of a parent than I am now with it. There are just things that now I look, so I sold off a little bit. Like now I have to try to stay more healthier and work out and stay younger so I could still run with them in a few years. But, but I feel like I'm in a better place to be a parent. Like,
absolutely.
It's just maybe a maturity thing. And I was very immature growing up. So it probably took the world was probably like, the universe is like, we're going to wait till you get to a certain point to allow this to happen. So,
I was in my mid 30s when I had kids. And I used to think if I had started younger, I would have had more kids.
Right.
And the more I think about that statement, I think, gosh, if I had them when I was younger, I don't know that I even would have had 3 because I just wouldn't have been patient. I just wouldn't have had the patience to handle it.
Right.
So,
I mean, they're fun, but they definitely test your patience and stuff. Well, listen, Bitsy, it was great talking to you. I really want to say thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed this chat. And, I think you're touching on a really good thing there. Like I said, in a world we live in, everybody's so creative and I'm not creative, so crazy busy that, having another tracker in their life, because everybody's so used to having trackers, just having one that maybe that says, hey, look, put down what you're doing for 5 minutes, put down the phone, don't put your Facebook status up, spend that time doing this with your children. I think you'll realize that'll go, a million miles. Because like I said, I see it, my kids, every big toy that they've ever wanted, that they've ever gotten, that, oh my gosh, it's the toy to end all toys, is soon forgotten. But yet the memories of little things that come up, just little things about the time my daughter, sorry, I know we're going here, but like my daughter still loves to tell a story about how daddy pushed her off the swing. So one time I was pushing her on the swing and I pushed her too hard in her back and she went off the swing and she landed on her bum. And she was young and I was like terrified. But she's fine, but she loves to tell that story and not in a bad way. Like, oh, Dad, remember the time you did that? So it's the moments. It's all those little moments that
and you just, the best way to ensure that you would remember that when she is 18 is to start writing this stuff down. And hopefully my book will help parents capture so much of that and hold on to it and be able to look back.
There was one thing that my wife and I did when our kids were born. We got them email addresses and we started emailing them. So every once in a while we send them emails and
fantastic.
And we've been doing it since they were babies. So my daughter's 9 now. Now, obviously when they were younger, it was a lot more, but probably a couple times a year, they get an email about something like that. So having that, hopefully they don't lose their accounts, but again, do you want to just, there's so much going on in the world. It's so crazy. It's moving so quickly. But the most important thing really is our family and our children. And we've got to find times. And if you need to take 5 seconds a day to do it or whatever it is, 5 minutes, it's just going to open up communication. And I think it's going to help your children. This is what they want. Yes. They want your attention. And if they're getting it, it's just gonna be something amazing. You're gonna see the payoff in the future and stuff like that. So,
and if they're getting your attention because you chose to give it to them versus because they were screaming for it, that's a very different 5 minutes, isn't it?
It's 100% different. All right, Betsy, so nice talking to you. Really appreciate you being here.
Great, thanks so much, Mike. It's been a very, very fun conversation. Great getting to know you.
Awesome.